Hi everyone, welcome back to another reading with Raptors with the University of Minnesota Raptor Center. I'll wait for a few more folks to get in before I start explaining, but we are pretty obviously not at the Raptor Center today. We are taking a little bit of a field trip. So today we are coming to you live from my backyard. So last week I kind of, at the end of the video, I kind of alluded to the fact that, like a lot of people, our work schedules have changed a little bit over the last couple of months. And so we've kind of been rotating who's on for certain times of the week and kind of for certain weeks to make sure that we're all staying really separate and safe and everyone's staying really healthy. And so that meant that today I was not actually going to be at the Raptor Center, and it wasn't going to work very well for us to film on site. So we were able to arrange with the person who is working there today and myself to take one of our newest program birds on a bit of a field trip. So we are here in my backyard getting this bird a little bit of experience being what we call tethered out, or what we might do at we present some sort of like booth style meet and greet type program where we'll have birds perched out in different places all around kind of the Minnesota area. And we wanted to give him a little bit of practice with that. So this is one of our newest, I'll turn it so you can see him a little bit better for right now. This is one of our newest program birds. We call him Scout, and he is a red-tailed hawk. So he's a few years old. He came to us as an adult bird and has kind of an interesting story I could talk about a little bit more later. But he's kind of relatively new to programs and had just been going out on programs kind of all through this fall and winter. And then kind of coming into the spring, we wanted to get him out doing a few more new things. And so we're trying to take this as an opportunity to give him a little bit of change of pace to kind of keep that training going, even though we don't really have that many places to go right now. We figured that this would be a great opportunity to do something a little bit different, give him a little bit of kind of different point of view. I will also say, since we are in a neighborhood, so far there hasn't been too many ambient noises. We have some birds around, of course. There is a flock of jays that lives in the big tree behind me. We heard the crows earlier. There's actually a bald eagle overhead right now. I don't think I'm going to be able to turn the camera, but there's actually a juvenile bald eagle soaring around over my house right now. Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous. It looks like it's probably a second year, maybe a third year bald eagle. Oh man, okay, that was pretty cool. Sorry, the angle is hard to turn up. I will try not to get too distracted by the local birds, but so the bald eagle. We heard some crows earlier. They were doing a little bit of calling when I first got this bird out, but it seems like they've quieted down for now. So you might get a little bit of ambient noise. I heard someone doing some yard work earlier. We should be okay, but if you do have any problems hearing, if the audio is a little bit funky, go ahead and put a comment in there and I'll try to kind of get closer, be a little bit louder. If it gets a little bit distracting. So this will just be a really fun experiment, and we'll get to hang out and talk about this red-tailed hawk. First, we have our story for the week. We have a really nice one that I thought was really fitting for talking about being in someone's yard, which is called On Meadowview Street, and it is by Henry Cole. And I really liked this book. This was actually brought in by our curator of birds from her personal home collection of children's books. So yeah, On Meadowview Street. We'll get started. There's also been a little bit of breeze too, so he's been kind of opening up his wings a little bit and testing that out. So we'll see what he gets kind of interested in. So, it was a big day. Carolyn and her family were moving into their new house on Meadowview Street. See all the people lining up as they move in. After things were unpacked, Carolyn's dad decided the grass was too tall and got busy mowing the lawn. Carolyn was about to explore the new street to see if there was a meadow on Meadowview Street when she noticed a small blossom. See the tiny little flower in the yard. "It's beautiful," Carolyn said to herself, "and all alone." The mower was getting closer. Carolyn thought, "I'd better do something quick." There's Carolyn with the little flower. You see the lawnmower coming. The mower came to a halt. "Daddy," Carolyn pleaded, couldn't you mow around my flower? He said, thinking, well, that's less mowing for me. It's protecting the little flower she found. Keratin raced inside the house. She poked around the boxes in the basement. Aha, she smiled. Some string and some sticks. Just what I need. Digging around in those boxes, finding those. Before long, Keratin had made a small wildflower preserve. Then she noticed another flower had bloomed nearby. So you can see her protecting the little flower. Oh, and there is another one. She's extended it out. Now she has 2 whole flowers. Her preserve got bigger. Oops, this one. You can see her watering her few flowers. It got bigger and bigger. The butterfly seems to like my little garden, Keratin thought happily. See it getting bigger and bigger. As the grass grew taller, more flowers popped up all over the yard. Soon, there were different kinds in different colors everywhere. There we go. You can see that nice big patch of wildflowers. Keratin's dad had a great idea for the mower. It's out in the grass with a sign that says, "For sale." One day, Keratin sat in her preserve in the heat of the sun. "My garden needs a shady spot," she said to her parents. "A shady spot sounds nice," replied Keratin's mom. Soon a truck made a delivery. Keratin's mom took pictures. "Welcome to your new home," said Keratin to the maple tree. There's the maple tree on the truck, digging a hole for the tree. The next day, as Keratin admired the maple tree, a wren landed on the end of her shovel. "Oh, you're looking for a home too," said Keratin. You can see Keratin looking at her nice big field. And then there's the tiny little wren on the shovel. Keratin and her dad got to work. They found some plans for building bird houses. Great Rouse in the background from Scout. Keratin helped cut the wood and nail the pieces together. They're getting ready to make that birdhouse, kind of gluing it all together. Perfect, thought Keratin. So did the wren. There's that finished birdhouse with the wren going in. In no time, there were birds and insects everywhere, around the tree and zipping among the flowers. Soon, the wren house was full of twigs for a nest. Keratin wanted one more thing. "We need a place where everyone can get a drink of water," she said. I had put a small piece of food on some little twigs over here in the grass, so that's where he's gone. There he is. So here's Keratin sitting out in the grass. You can see there's a butterfly, some dragonflies, the wren, all sorts of wildlife out in this yard. The next day, she and her dad began building a pond. See them digging a nice big hole, some birds in the background. They dug a large, shallow hole and lined it with a heavy plastic sheet. Keratin added plants that like living in water. She lugged large rocks to the edge, making ledges and little caverns for creatures to hide in, making this beautiful little pond. That looks like some hard work carrying all those rocks. the more Carolyn and her family worked on their yard, the more it changed. It was now a home to many things. So you can see Carolyn and her friends having a picnic. All these bird houses on the fences. Lots of birds flying around. See some insects flitting around. There's a butterfly by the driveway. Hopefully that's not too loud. Motorcycle noise in the background. I'll just talk really loud. And soon, the Jacksons' yard changed, and the Smiths, and the Sotos. So you can see Carolyn's yard there. And look, there are even more people planting trees in their yards too. Now there really was a meadow on Meadowview Street. Here's some of the little animals that might be around. There's a ladybird beetle, a swallow, monarch caterpillars on milkweed, coneflower, a beetle, a mud turtle, oh, a bee. We have a brown bat, a dragonfly, a hummingbird, and a house wren. We have a meadow mouse and a skink. We also have a wolf spider, black-eyed Susans and mallow, which are flowers, a small copper butterfly on bee balm, and of course, a green snake. So here are all those animals that appeared in Carolyn's yard. So the sentence was, now there really was a meadow on Meadowview Street and a home for everyone. Carolyn with her watering can, and then those young wrens now, probably hatched out of that treehouse. And then this is just the last kind of title page, but look at all these houses with their own little meadows in each one. I just thought that was really nice. That was On Meadowview Street by Henry Cole. I really like on the cover too. I don't know if I showed it up close, but there's her building her little wildflower preserve with a butterfly, and there's a little bird watching her. It looks like a catbird. It was on Meadowview Street. Thought that was a really good fit for kind of being out here. I know a lot of people are working on yards right now and thinking about what they want to plant and doing a lot of gardening. So I thought it was a really good fit. So hopefully everyone could hear pretty okay. I know it got a little bit noisy at the end, but I think it went okay. So a few things about this red-tailed hawk, as you see, he's kind of looking around. Like I said, we have a lot of birds around here. We have a lot of big trees in this area, so we have a lot of birds that are living out here that he's been checking out. So there have been some jays that have been very vocal about maybe not wanting a red-tailed hawk hanging out in their space. So this particular red-tailed hawk is actually with us kind of through an interesting story. So as I'm sure most of you know, most of our birds that live with us for our education program are birds that came into our clinic. A lot of them came in as juvenile or first-year birds who came in and were either sick or injured and for some reason or another could not go back out to the wild. Usually for some sort of injury that healed but didn't heal well enough to let them really survive on their own. Some of them have other issues where they really don't know how to live on their own. This bird is a little bit different. So he's actually from the western part of the United States. Sorry, the sun's getting kind of bright, huh? He's from the western part of the United States, out in Oregon, actually. And he was, at some point in his very young life, he was actually found by somebody who decided to take him home and keep him. And so they didn't do that with any permission, so they were doing it illegally. So they were keeping him at their home or something like that. And finally, the authorities found out and were able to kind of get him away from that situation. But since he had been living with a person and we didn't really know a lot of the backstory of how he came to be with that person, how long he'd been with them, it was decided that he might not be able to survive on his own out in the wild. And so to keep him safe, it was decided that he would be a really good fit for an education bird. He's done a really good job of doing some training with a wildlife rehabilitator out in Oregon who's also a falconer. So he was really used to working with red-tailed hawks and other raptors, and kind of training him to fly, and training him how to kind of be close to people and be on a glove, all of that. So then he was sent out here to Minnesota after doing some of that initial training out west. So if you're looking at him, especially with his back turned to us, if you're looking at his tail, he looks just very slightly different from our local red-tailed hawks. He's a little bit more stripy. Probably wouldn't notice too much of a difference if you saw him sitting up on a nice tall perch somewhere, like on a nice tree branch next to a big meadow prairie, or on a light pole next to a highway, somewhere where you normally would see a lot of red-tailed hawks. Probably wouldn't notice, but kind of here up close you can kind of see his tail has a lot of stripes on it. I also think that his kind of belly feathers and his kind of leg feathers have some nice stripes on him too. So he's a little bit stripier, and that's pretty typical of our kind of more west coast, kind of western US red-tailed hawks. Just look a little bit different from our kind of central midwestern red-tailed hawks, who tend to be a little bit more kind of pale and not as stripy. So that is kind of his story. So he's probably, we think, about 3 years old this year. Again, since we don't really know exactly how he came to be living with that person, we don't know exactly how old he is, but probably around there. So yeah, that is, it's gonna do a really good rouse. Yeah, very nice. Sitting out in the sun is a really good time to do a lot of preening and feather care and rousing to make sure that those feathers are nice and clean and tidy. So he's gonna sit out in the sun here. So yeah, that is this particular bird. We call him Scout, kind of after that sitting up on a tall perch, kind of looking and waiting and kind of scanning the area, looking for prey that red-tailed hawks do. So you'll normally see them either up, kind of soaring in big circles, or sitting up on a nice tall perch, looking for things on the ground like rats and mice and rabbits. They might also eat things like lizards and snakes here in the summer, all sorts of those kind of ground animals. Sometimes you'll see them chasing squirrels in kind of tree areas. Usually you find them kind of on the edges of forest areas, so where there are some trees to sit in and nest in and perch on, but then lots of big open spaces. As you can probably see when he puts his wings out, he's got this big, long, broad wingspan. It's great for soaring, not very good for a lot of really intense, dark, deep forest flying. So usually you'll find them more on the edges of forests, kind of where the forest meets the prairie. That also means that they've adapted really well to living in suburban and urban areas. Gust of wind there. So they adapt really well to that, since especially here in Minnesota, we have a lot of trees. We have a lot of natural spaces. Even in the middle of our cities, we have a great park system here. So we tend to have a lot of these red-tailed hawks kind of in the area, doing the really good work of dealing with our rabbits and our mice and all those other animals. So yes, this is a red-tailed hawk. Why do they have a red tail? That is a fantastic question. With a lot of bird colors, it's kind of hard to say why exactly they're a certain color or not. So why does he have a red tail instead of a black tail, or instead of a white tail? I don't know. I don't know if we can really figure it out, but I will say that this, for red-tailed hawks, they do have a difference between kind of their first year or juvenile or kind of teenaged red-tailed hawks and the adults, in that the younger red-tailed hawks don't have the red tail. So I don't know why it's red, but having the different colors, so having that tail become red, is a really great way of showing other red-tailed hawks either, hey, I'm just a teenager, I don't really know what I'm doing, versus, I'm an adult, this is my territory, this is my space, I know what I'm doing. So it's kind of a great way to signal other red-tailed hawks who's kind of a young red tail and who's an adult red-tailed hawk that they might need to be a little bit more concerned about. So yeah, really good question. It's always very interesting when thinking about birds and other animals, kind of why they are the colors that they are, or why they have certain adaptations or features. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell exactly why, but I can tell you at least that there is that. That's the juveniles, they lose those tail feathers. So birds hatched last spring in 2019. This summer in 2020, they'll be losing those old tail feathers and growing in new ones. You actually might be able to see a glimpse of right now he has already lost, they kind of go in order. And so right now he has kind of the second tail feather from the end on both sides. it kind of looks like it's sticking out there near the top, and that's that feather growing in. So if he had, so he's already molted that one feather for the summer and is growing in the new ones. So yeah, unsure why exactly it's red, but really good question. Questions. Oh, how big is his wingspan? So he is, again, partially from being kind of out west. Those red-tailed hawks tend to be just a little bit smaller on average than our kind of central, kind of north-central red-tailed hawks, just because it's generally not as cold, so you don't need to be as big. And partially because he is a male, and generally in the raptor world, the girls are bigger than the boys, so kind of the females are larger than the males. It's a very bold robin that just flew by. So his wingspan is probably about maybe 3.5 to 4 feet, somewhere in there. I'd have to kind of sit down and measure it. He weighs about, what would he be? He's about 900 grams, so he's right around 2 pounds in weight. So probably about 3.5 to 4 foot wingspan. We have a huge bumblebee zipping around. I have a lot of small flowers growing in the yard, so we've got a lot of bumblebees hanging out. Somebody was also asking about, do all red-tailed hawks have that little white spot on the back of their heads? Most of them have like little white kind of streaky feathers, or if they're kind of a darker colored red-tailed hawk, they'll have little white streaky feathers. So there tends to be like these little markings on the backs of all of their heads. His in particular just seems really bright and obvious, that little white, it looks like this like nice little white spot. So just how his feathers look, is they've got that white little spot on the back, but that kind of color pattern isn't unusual. I just think that his is a little bit extra bold. Oh, someone else has joined me outside. Fantastic. Yeah, the markings on their chest and underneath their wings, and like I said, his are particularly kind of prominent and stripy. So yeah, they have these like really nice markings. For red-tailed hawks, especially now when we have most of our other kind of similar shaped hawks, we call them the soaring hawks or the buteo hawks. I know, kind of a fun name. It's B-U-T-E-O, buteo. That's a kind of descriptor for these kind of bulkier, wider hawks, as opposed to what we call our accipiters, so our Cooper's hawks and our sharp-shinned hawks, those kind of really fast forest hawks who hunt other birds. We have our buteo or soaring hawks who tend to hunt mammals and kind of ground animals. And so now that we have our kind of very similar hawks back in the area, for red-tailed hawks especially, you'll notice on their wing they have that kind of wrist joint, so the kind of wing comes down and then comes up and then kind of goes to that big, long, nice end. Right around here at their wrist, they have a nice little curve. It's like a black little comma on their wings. That's great for identifying a red-tailed hawk, especially if you can't see that red tail, but you can see that little comma right near their wrists. It's a really great tool for identifying red-tailed hawks. So I think they might not be the flashiest as far as colors go, but I really, really enjoy kind of all the patterns. They have a lot of really kind of mixes of tans and browns that I just think are really striking. I also saw another question about why is he tethered? So he is fully flighted. He doesn't have any physical injuries, like I was saying before. Since the circumstances of how he came to live with people for such a long period of time are kind of unknown, it was decided that it probably wasn't very safe for him to be out in the wild on his own. Mostly the tether is because we are outside, and so there's a little bit of wind. We have all sorts of kind of random things that might happen. We might get some crows that show up again to yell at us. Anything, or things you might want to go explore. And I just want to make sure that we don't end up with him kind of up in some trees or something like that where he might decide to stay or might get stuck on something, anything like that. So the tether is really just for his kind of safety right now. It's acting as a pair of emergency brakes just in case he tries to go somewhere that might not be safe for him. I want to make sure that he makes it back to the Raptor Center safe and sound. So we're just out here kind of getting some practice at what we would be doing out on what we call a booth, or kind of a meet and greet style program type thing that will at some point be able to resume. Probably not for a bit, but we want to keep all of the birds kind of in practice for that kind of thing, especially for this bird who really hadn't had a chance to go out onto many of those. We were kind of looking forward to this summer being his big kind of practice time. So I wanted to make sure that he kind of still kept up those skills of being on a perch like this in a new place he's never been before and probably will never be at again. But I wanted to give him some practice, so I thought that this would be some good training and some good enrichment for kind of looking around, seeing some new stuff. I purposely put some like sticks over there for him to play with if he was interested. There's all sorts of plants that he could try to rip up if he wanted to. I think right now he's mostly been looking around and listening. Like I said, there's a little bit of a breeze going on too that might be trying to catch a little bit of. So we're hanging out. There's also some bumblebees. So lots of interesting things to look at. How high can they fly? Yeah, so red-tailed hawks, I'd have to look up the exact, like an exact height as far as that they can go, but generally they're usually soaring kind of to the point where you can see them kind of doing those big circles. What they're doing is they're catching what we call thermals. So like right now, the sun is out, it's warming up everything. So I'm getting nice and toasty warm. He's hopefully getting nice and toasty warm too. But it's also making the ground nice and toasty warm too. And so when the ground heats up, it's actually warming the air above the ground too. And warm air rises. Cold air sinks, warm air rises. And so warm air kind of rises in these big currents during the day. And so red-tailed hawks use these big, broad wings to kind of catch that air and do those big circles upwards. That was, if you were here at the very start, there was a bald eagle soaring over our neighborhood, and it was doing the same thing. It was catching a nice, big, kind of warm thermal, that big kind of rising current of air. It's also, you'll tend to see red-tailed hawks much more active kind of in the kind of main warmer parts of the day. You usually won't see them like right up at the crack of dawn. They'll usually wait a little bit until the warm air has started to kind of rise a little bit so that they have that kind of warm current of air that they can rely on. So as far as the actual height, kind of depends on what they're trying to do. I don't know if we have any good data for like what's the what the highest height that they can go to. That would be a really good one to look up. So I'll try to look that one up afterwards and see if I can answer it in the comments after, because I'm not sure the exact height. Typically they're not trying to go too high because they're mostly flying for hunting purposes, so looking for food. It's kind of hard to look for food when you're way too high up. But especially for like migration, not a lot of our red tails migrate, but especially kind of the further north you go, some of them might shift a little bit south. So if they're doing any long distance travel, they might be going to some nice heights. So we're checking out, there's a squirrel in the other tree. We were checking out here for a second. Finn wants to know how big the babies are. Yeah, so when they first hatch, so a red-tailed hawk egg is about the same size as a chicken egg. So if you have any chicken eggs in your refrigerator right now, if you take one of those, that's about the size of a red-tailed hawk egg. And so when the babies hatch out of it, they have to fit inside of that egg. So they start off pretty small. They're growing up really quickly though. So they grow to this full adult size here within about a month and a half. So they grow up very, very quickly. So I just want to make sure I give them some food for hanging out here. So they're growing up really, really quickly. So they don't really stay very small for long. They're growing really, really fast, especially once they start to get those adult feathers in too. Really looking forward to kind of getting up out of the nest so they can start learning how to fly and hunt. So a lot of our red-tailed hawks are either have hatched already or are hatching here pretty soon. This is about the kind of time of year for them. So they'll be learning how to fly here probably by probably as we get into June and July, we'll start to see a lot of those red-tailed hawk young learning how to fly and kind of starting to learn how to hunt. So by then they're going to be full-sized. So they do not stay small for very long. Someone else also has some bees outside. Fantastic. Yeah, there's a nice little breeze too. I think he's trying to catch a little bit of. We were sitting here really quietly and still for a while, and I don't know if he wants to go exploring or... Like I said, they've got some squirrels hanging out in the trees over there too. A lot of squirrels in this area. Oh, do they build their own nests or do they use pre-existing nests? Red-tailed hawks usually build their own nests, but a lot of times, excellent, a lot of times they will also, they'll come back to the same nest year after year. And they do a lot of upkeep on those nests too. So if they're having a really good successful nesting site where they've been able to find lots of food and they've had really good luck in raising a lot of their young, they'll keep coming back to that same nesting site. So they'll add on some sticks, they'll add on some nesting material. Maybe I'll give them like a chunk of food here maybe to work on a little bit. I'll put it by these sticks. So they'll add on some nice soft nesting material, they'll add on more sticks, and then they'll kind of tidy it up a little bit, make it nice and comfortable, and then they'll use that for the next year. So generally they come back to the same nest, so they'll build the first nest, and then they'll come back year after year. There is a plane. I'll wait a second. You know that we are getting close to summertime, when you start to get seaplanes, there was just like a water plane going overhead. So he's gonna sit in the grass, it looks like, and rip up that chunk of rat there. So yeah, if you're interested actually in seeing some details on red-tailed hawk nests, I know I probably mention them every single time we do Reading with Raptors, but the Cornell Lab of Ornithology has a red-tailed hawk nest cam. I'll sit a little bit closer, we've got a lawnmower going now too. So they have a red-tailed hawk nest cam that's been in action for several years at this point. There's one female red-tailed hawk who comes back to it year after year, and she's had the same male coming back for a couple years now. So I think their eggs have already hatched for the spring, but they got some really nice youngsters in that nest right now too. So definitely, if you're interested in looking more at that, if you go into the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, they have the it's on the Cornell University campus, that red-tailed hawk nest. So definitely check that out. It's always a really good watch. So how far off can they see in terms of seeing prey? So their vision, so a lot of people will quote things like, oh, they could read a newspaper at the length of a football field or something like that. That aren't really quite accurate, as we've been doing more studies on red-tailed hawks and other kind of raptors and what their vision is really like. We find that red-tailed hawks, as far as the distance of their vision, they can see about the same or a little bit farther than what we can see, but that is still pretty impressive because their eyeballs are so much smaller than ours. They also have, their vision works a little bit differently. Our vision is really good at seeing kind of certain kinds of movements, a lot of colors. Their vision is really keyed into seeing movement, especially really fast movement. So they're able to kind of watch something that to us might be going too fast and looks like it's blurred. So if I were to, say, throw a baseball somewhere, it looks like it's kind of a blur until it comes to a stop or slows down enough to see. But a red-tailed hawk would be able to watch it and see exactly where that baseball is the whole time. So they have vision that kind of processes moving things faster than what our eyes do. And they're really keyed into looking for that movement, so that if they see a little mouse kind of running around in a field, they can pick that out and see that and follow that really, really easily. They also, so just like us, they have what we call binocular vision, so eyes that face forward so that the kind of field of view combines so that we can see kind of how far away things are. They have depth perception. But in addition to that, our eyes kind of have one spot each that they can focus on. So we end up with one spot in the center of our vision that we can really focus in on. That's kind of how we see things. Kind of everything else on the sides is maybe a little bit blurry or not as in focus, but right in the middle of our vision, super focused. For raptors, especially our daytime raptors, they have multiple spots. So each eye has kind of two spots of focus, which ends up combining so that they have, I'll kind of sit here, lots of activity. There's some loud noises happening. But they can focus on a spot over here, a spot over here, a spot over here, and a spot in the middle. So they're able to really focus on multiple spots at once. So even though their distance vision is, like I said, about the same or a little bit farther than ours, they still have some points of vision that really make them well suited to seeing those very small animals running around very, very fast. So really excellent vision with all of those things combined. Finn also wants to know how long are their legs. You actually probably just got some really good views about how long their legs are. Bird legs are surprisingly long, I think, to a lot of people because of how fluffy and feathery their bodies are. So I think they just like really want to go move around and explore. Getting used to staying in one spot. Give him something else here to do in a few minutes. So he actually has some pretty long legs. So of the height that he's standing right now, most of that is leg, and then the rest of it is mostly neck. His actual torso, kind of the main part of his body, is actually really small and kind of slants forward, but most of his height is just all leg and the neck. So they actually have really, really long legs to kind of go with those very long wings, which are kind of their equivalent of their arms. So yeah, very long legs hiding underneath all of those fluffy feathers. Always a really good question. Do they mate for life? Yeah, they would be good drivers, right? Do they mate for life? So in general, red-tailed hawks, along with most other raptors, they'll usually, since they're returning to the same kind of nest site or nest territory, they usually end up kind of with the same mate. That being said, if they have a couple of years where they're maybe not as successful, maybe I'll like see if he'll hang it on the glove for this bit. Maybe we'll hang it a little bit closer. So if they have a few years where they're maybe not very successful, it's just not a good combination, or the nest site doesn't have enough prey nearby, or has too many predators, or something like that, they might switch it up a little bit. They'll also do something like if the female comes to the nest, now we're very comfy, if a female comes to the nest and the male isn't there, or vice versa, they have no problem finding another mate if for some reason one of the two partners doesn't come back for 1 year. So in general, yes, if everything's going well, absolutely yes. You'll see them with the same partner for a long time. But if things get a little bit difficult or tricky, or something happens to one of them, they usually have no problem finding a different partner. Very practical. Yeah, a lot of people spotting hawks when they're out on the road. Definitely. They have, we usually see a lot of red-tailed hawks. I usually see a lot of them when I'm driving. Preferably as a passenger, right? We don't want to birdwatch and drive. That's not safe. Right, do you want to come with me? We can sit a little bit closer. Maybe feel a little bit comfier. Maybe being on the glove and being a little bit higher up. I'll come a little bit closer to the camera. But yeah, usually we'll see red-tailed hawks if we are out kind of on the road. That's kind of their, a kind of human-made version of their natural habitat and kind of what that looks like. See if being up a little bit more is a little bit different. Just gonna tie this in here just for safety since we're outside. Want to make sure he doesn't go anywhere that would be unsafe. So yeah, with roads, they tend to be a really good kind of analog, kind of a human-made version of their natural habitat. Again, those kind of tall spaces that are kind of surrounded by nice big open tall grassy areas like the sides of roads, those ditches. You'll also see red-tailed hawks there too because there's also a lot of prey there. You don't really think of a highway as being somewhere where you'd see a lot of prey, a lot of small animals living, but those grasses provide some great habitat, and there's also a lot of food there, and some of the food there is actually from people. So there's a lot of garbage on the sides of roads. You've probably noticed as you've been kind of moving around. A lot of times people will either accidentally or on purpose drop a lot of litter. There's also a lot of times where people will go, well, I have this apple core or this orange peel or something like that. I'm just gonna throw it out the window because it's not really littering. It's going to biodegrade. Something will eat it. It'll just break down. It's not a big deal. But the problem with that is that there are animals that show up to eat those little pieces of garbage, like our apple cores and our orange peels, stuff like that. But those animals are things like our mice and our lizards and our squirrels and our other small critters that all make excellent sources of food for our red-tailed hawks, our great horned owls as well, a lot of these kind of birds that we tend to see a lot of near the sides of roads. And so all of this sounds like a really good deal for these raptors, but the problem is that on those highways we also have a lot of cars, right? So since we have those vehicles nearby, it can be a kind of dangerous situation for these birds since they're not really paying too much attention to what the cars are doing. They're really focused in on that animal they want to catch and eat. I think part of our problem right now is the wind has shifted direction, so it's coming from a couple different directions. So yeah, a lot of times when we see, especially our red-tailed hawks or great horned owls, a lot of our other raptors, a lot of times we'll see them in at the Raptor Center for injuries because of a collision with a vehicle. So they're flying in front of those cars, the car doesn't see them, they get hit by the vehicle, end up on the side of the road there, and hopefully people find them and can bring them to the Raptor Center, but sometimes not the case. So we want to do everything we can to help out our kind of roadside hunting raptors by not giving them as much reason to be there right by the roads. So if you have garbage while you're driving around, even if it's something that other animals might eat, keep it in your car, find a nice recycling bin, compost bin, trash can, anything like that, to go ahead and put that trash in, so that way we're not encouraging these birds to hang out by the roads. I think we might be getting done here with him, so I have a crate for him that I might put him back. I think we've maybe reached our limit on what we're maybe comfy with. But I do want to say thank you all again for joining us. Oh, are there wings? Yeah. I'm gonna put him in a crate and then I'll be right back. I have a few more questions I want to answer while we're sitting here outside. And then a couple more things I wanted to say about On Meadowview Street. I actually have a couple of resources I want to put on all of your radar. So I'm gonna just step over here for a second and put him in a crate. Just enjoy this wonderful backyard for a moment. Sorry about that. Part of the with the training process is I didn't want him to be sitting here getting a little bit worried. I think there's a lawnmower noise too that might be a little bit part of it too. So sorry about that. I put him back into a crate to kind of take a little bit of a break. I think once we're done, and maybe once the lawnmower noise is done, I'll probably take him back out for a little bit, kind of once we're done filming, and just kind of let him sit out here for a few more minutes, get a few pieces of food, so that way we kind of end on a really good note. But I figured it was time for a break for him, so thank you all for being very understanding of that. We'll just enjoy. There's a nice bumblebee floating by, you can all admire. It's probably very small on your screen, but yeah, I saw a couple of last kind of questions about red-tailed hawks, which was, are their wings designed to be as quiet as owl wings? And like I said, with a little bit of the ambient noise you might not have been able to hear, but his wings are actually a little bit noisy. They are not designed to be quiet. They're designed to be fast, and they're designed to be very good at soaring. So a lot of our daytime raptors tend to have these, they're very kind of like stiff feathers, pretty similar to most other feathers you've probably felt before. That kind of, it feels almost like plastic almost, that kind of like nice kind of stiff material. It's actually made out of keratin, like your fingernails or your hair. So just like the rest of their feathers, so they've got those nice kind of stiff flight feathers. So they tend to be pretty loud because they're kind of displacing that air to go really fast. So no, their wings are pretty noisy, especially compared to an owl's wings. Really good question though. During the day, trying to be quiet isn't really as big of a deal. There's a lot of noise, a lot of ambient noises going on. They're usually relying on their speed. Feed the crows in our yard dry cat kibble. Would a hawk eat this? Typically not. So raptors in general are really limited in what they can eat. They're really only eating other animals. They don't really have the ability to really digest too much non-animal material, other than what they might eat that's already in their prey's stomachs is usually kind of the only source of non-animal food that they would get. So usually they're eating meat and bones and organs and stuff like that. So typically I would not think so. They're not really birds that you can really do any sort of feeder situation with, other than folks who might be trying to have bird feeders and might be accidentally attracting Cooper's hawks. Sorry, hopefully you can all still hear pretty well. So yeah, in general, not really a bird that you could really leave food out for, which is a-okay. They've usually got some nice big territories or finding lots of food in them. So yeah, generally if you're leaving out food for crows, hawks aren't usually going to show up to eat those. I saw one question. I'm going to try to expand out this comment. Oh, yeah. All right. I think I got most of the questions. Oh, somebody had asked, this is going to be a fun little technical question. I will try not to talk about too much because it's actually something I really love to talk about. Are albino redtails the same thing as criders? So criders, it's kind of a complicated question. Criders are a subspecies of red-tailed hawks. Sometimes people refer to different subspecies of red-tailed hawks. They're kind of all across North America. So we have a lot of different areas that red-tailed hawks are living in. And so if you have a red-tailed hawk population on the west coast of the United States and you have a population of red-tailed hawks on the east coast of the United States, they're probably not going to mix very often. Maybe a couple of them might wander into the middle of the US, but for the most part, those two populations are going to stay totally separate, right? So you end up with kind of these pockets of areas where you get different red-tailed hawks that tend to look a little bit different from each other, have a little bit of differences, even to the point where they have genetic differences, where they have some kind of different markers in their DNA that are different from one group to another, just because of them being separate for long enough. So there's one in kind of the central US and Canada, kind of in the Dakotas, up into Alberta, that kind of area, called the criders morph, or the criders kind of subspecies of red-tailed hawk. That tends to be really, really pale in color because they're living in these big open kind of snowy plains. So that is a color variation that's kind of in the normal realm of variation, whereas albino means that they aren't producing any melanin, which is kind of the pigment cells in our body, so like our skin and our hair and birds' feathers that make color happen. So since they aren't producing that melanin, that's where you get albino animals from, is they're not producing that melanin, that pigment that they need. So that makes things look much paler, right? Depending on kind of the material that's being produced, whether it's feathers or whether it's skin or whether it's hair, it's gonna look a little bit different. So, you know, albino red-tails are a different thing. You'll actually normally see, you'll see red-tailed hawks with a lot of patches of white. So they're not actually albino, there's something else called leucistic. Which just means that their body isn't producing a certain kind of pigment also, just kind of in a different way than albino. So albino is kind of a recessive genetic mutation, whereas criters is kind of a genetic-based color difference in a certain population, if that makes sense. I could talk about this a lot. I'm trying very hard not to. I think subspecies are very interesting. I think I saw a couple more things come up. Yeah, we had a Cooper's hawk casing our bird feeder a couple of weeks ago. Do they hunt rodents or just songbirds? It's a really good question. Generally, Cooper's hawks are mainly eating other birds. Occasionally, they might eat some nice rodents, but they're really well suited for catching birds. So they have that really kind of fast, snappy flight. So you'll usually see them, especially if you have bird feeders. A lot of times people will see them kind of casing the joints, hiding in kind of bushes or trees nearby, and then they'll kind of swoop in and kind of suddenly appear, snag a bird, and then keep going and go sit somewhere to eat it. So if you have Cooper's hawks in your areas, generally they're looking for birds. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for those. Awesome job. Oh, awesome. And then one more thing, I guess, can they hear really well, or can you hear really well? I'm unsure if that question is asking about birds or not, so I'll answer it about red-tailed hawks. Our diurnal, or daytime raptors, tend to have pretty good hearing, kind of similar to ours as far as we can tell. We've actually been working on some studies on seeing what the hearing capabilities of things like bald eagles and golden eagles are, as part of a partnership with the Department of Energy, and figuring out ways to potentially figure out if there's a way that we could deter birds, especially our larger raptors, from flying near wind turbines. And so we've actually been just kind of starting some of the studies to do with what the actual capability of our birds' hearing is. So as far as we can tell, it seems to be roughly similar to ours as far as like a red-tailed hawk. So they seem to react to things that we can hear, don't seem to react to things that we don't hear. Owls, you can usually tell that they have such good hearing. You can see them reacting to even the quietest sounds. So we know that they're able to use their hearing to hunt very well. Whereas red-tailed hawks and our other diurnal or daytime raptors tend to be relying a lot more on their vision. So they're using that really intense color vision and that kind of quick movement to be able to hunt during the day as opposed to vision. So I have a few things that I wanted to put on folks' radar with regards to On Meadowview Street, especially this time of year as we're getting into times when we have all of our insects out, we're seeing all of our pollinators out, we have a lot of things blooming. I thought I would give you a couple of kind of resources if you're interested in learning more about some of the things that we saw on Meadowview Street, of kind of this more kind of native plants in a yard and kind of encouraging a lot of our local pollinators. So a couple of things I want to put on your radar, and we'll drop some links in the comments here too. If you check out the Bee Lab at the U of M, it's beelab.umn.edu. They have some really great resources on how to protect and help your local pollinators, especially our various species of local bees, to kind of keep our plant populations really healthy. Our plants are kind of the basis for the rest of our habitat, so we really want to keep all of our native species around. So helping our native pollinators is how we can do that. The Bee Lab also has some great links. If you are looking for stuff to do this spring and summer, now that we can kind of get outside a little bit more, check out their links on the Bee Lab website. They have some great links to some citizen science, where you can actually go, and if you see a bumblebee in your yard, you can take a picture and you can upload it, and that will help scientists be able to kind of track those populations of those really important insects. There's also specifically bumblebeewatch.org for specifically bumblebees. But the Bee Lab has some great resources for some other kind of pollinator-based citizen science programs where you can help scientists doing research, trying to get kind of cast as big of a net as they can to try to get as many people helping. If you're also interested in learning more about planting kind of native plants or kind of encouraging native plants in your area, the Minnesota Native Plant Society has some great guides. If you are elsewhere, I looked around for a couple different states. I think that most states have a native plant society, so if you kind of search if you're in a different state, I know Wisconsin has one, I checked a couple other states in the area and they all seem to have one, so check out the Native Plant Society for your state. They usually have some great resources on not only what plants are native, what kind of insects or other pollinators they might be good for, and where you can get them, because sometimes that can be really tricky to find where to actually get these native species to plant, so a lot of them will have great resources there, so check those out too. Other citizen science things. If you are looking for stuff to do this spring and summer, especially stuff that's outside, but even some stuff that's inside too, there's some great citizen science opportunities. Bird-related ones, there's definitely eBird, ebird.org. And that one's kind of run through Cornell, but it's kind of a nation and kind of global-wide kind of bird tracking thing. So if you're trying to get into bird watching, check out eBird. You can upload all of the kind of birds that you saw while you're out, and that way not only are you helping yourself keep track of all the birds you've seen, you're also helping scientists find out what birds are living where and when. So they have some really wonderful maps that they can then produce based off of people's observations. So people just like you are putting their observations of birds into eBird, and that's helping us figure out what these birds are doing all year, which is fantastic. On a similar note, there's also emammal.org. If you want something inside, you can sit inside and look at some trail cam pictures of motion activated trail cameras. So you can watch animals doing things at night and help scientists figure out, kind of identify what animal is in what picture and how many of them there are. Because going through all those pictures takes a lot of work, and so why not have people be able to look at these trail cams and enjoy the pictures while also doing the work of identifying what's going on in them, which is pretty cool. If you're interested in other kind of citizen science or the kind of science projects that you can participate in and help with, the US government has citizenscience.gov is a website that lists all of them. So if you're in a particular area, there are some that are specific to your area, some other ones that are online as well. So I did some deep dive research into some ways that if you're interested in making your kind of neighborhood or your backyard or your parks a little bit more friendly to our native wildlife, definitely check out some of those links. Like I said, the Bee Lab is great. Citizenscience.gov has some great resources as well. So definitely check those out, everyone. I think that's all the stuff on there. So I want to thank you all for joining me for this work from home edition of Reading with Raptors. Next week we'll be back at the Raptor Center, and we will not have lawnmower noises in the background, I hope. And so we will hopefully see you all then. So thanks again so much for joining us. This has been a fun time. So everyone, hopefully you're getting outside, enjoying some weather while still staying safe and healthy. We will talk to you all again next week. Have a great time until then.